Okay. Everybody hear me? Great. I'm really thrilled to see a nice crowd here. If you would make sure, if you wouldn't mind, I see your names. Just tell us what city you're in your little tile there. If we have time at the end, we can speak more, but I know everybody's time is valuable, so you want to get down to business. So in spite of our small delay, I'm so sorry. Hi, let's start over. I'm Andy Mizels. I am the very, very proud director of the Martin Pear Israel Fellowship. It's maybe the best thing I've ever done in a pretty long career. Um, and I'm really, it's been, oh, sorry, I gotta let some people in. Um, and I want to immediately, before we do anything else, I want to introduce some fellows who can tell you anything they tell you is going to be way better than anything I can tell you. So I'm going by who's in my screen and where you're sitting. Ellen Daniel is Director of Marketing out in the Meyerson JCC in Cincinnati. Give a wave, Ellen. Ellen is currently a fellow in Cohort 2. Allison Cohen is the Chief Development Officer out in Staten Island. She was Cohort 1. She's now officially an alumna. And we have Becky Metzger at the from the Birnbaum JCC in Bridgewater, New Jersey, also a member of the founding cohort. So they're here to answer questions, to add to whatever I may say, and to give you really a first-person account of what it's like to be in the program. Okay. So I just see quickly we have, well, we got Boulder. We know some Boulder people. Tampa, Baltimore. Okay, Boston. Very good. Okay, very nice. Denver. Very nice overview of folks. So here's what we're going to do. I first came onto this program as a consultant. I was doing other things at JCC Association. I work in Jewish education. And as I'm working on this thing, I'm going, this is really a phenomenal program. It's really a great job for somebody. Never occurred to me that I would be that somebody. And I really do feel very lucky that the fates allowed for me to take this on. It's really been tremendous. So I'm going to give you a very brief overview of the program, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions. I'm going to make sure each of our fellows has a chance to say something. And I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, can everybody see that? Okay. All right, so here we go. The Martin Pear Israel Fellowship, and I would be remiss if I didn't tell you a little bit about Martin Pear. Let me do this as a slideshow instead of so messy. Here we go. I'm all off because I'm always early and I had to rush to get on. It doesn't make me happy. Okay, Martin Pear is was a lifer in the JCC movement. He's right there in the middle, holding. There's a little boy next to him on his lap. He was the executive director of 4 or 5 different JCCs across the United States, and he had a great love of Israel. And he passed away about 5 years ago, and his family wanted to do something. This is the real legacy, right? All these children and grandchildren. What he really wanted, they wanted to really honor him in a special way. So we have some wonderful donors. The Hoffer family, that's Rachel on the left and Jonathan on the right, and 2 of their daughters in the middle. And they said, how can we honor him? And so a program that both brings people who are relatively new in their tenure into the JCC movement, relatively new, meaning not 30 years, and getting them building a cohort, and equally to really learn about Israel. Martin Pear was devoted to Israel. One of his children has built a family and lives in Israel. So these are the 2 things that are most important to him. And this is how his family decided to honor him. Okay, and here we go. These are the goals. Educate Israel education and engagement, and you know, and building a personal connection with Israel. I think our fellows can tell you we have people from across the spectrum, people who have lived in Israel, people who have never even visited Israel, and everybody in their own way, at their own entry level, found a way to build a connection with Israel or expand their connection with Israel, and then to in some way bring that experience back to their JCC. And I always call it 1B. It's not even 2. Is to build a strong professional cohort. That's very important to our funders because it was very important to Martin Pear, so that there would be people in the pipeline continuing to take on various positions in the JCC movement. this is more or less the educational arc. Okay. And this is an educational program. I mean, we do experiential education a lot. We enjoy ourselves, but this is about learning. So the first part of it is to build a foundation and a common language, because again, people are coming in at very different with different backgrounds. I wouldn't call it level, we call it background. But somehow, and again, maybe one of the fellows will attest to this later, we find a way to kind of somehow find a common entry point. So the people who have a little bit more maybe can offer some perspective, but they really love seeing Israel through the eyes of people who are discovering it for the first time. And somehow we build this language. And we also want to build a basic understanding of Israeli history and social groups in Israel. And, you know, there's no lack of things to talk about in Israel, especially now. The second part, we really dig into the complexities and nuances of Israel. And complexity and nuance are probably, you know, should be in the title of the program. It's always been the case. Israel has always had layers of understanding. And right now, people really are looking to understand better. How did we get here? What's going on? What is the history? And together with that, this is a living, breathing, vibrant nation with people who live their lives and are this is their home. And we want you to sort of understand what all of that means. And again, I won't say it constantly, but what all of it means now has never been really more important to understand. And then the last part is to bring it home. And this is where we are now with the cohort 2. What is the relationship between Israel and North America, both writ large in terms of histories and governments, and you know how does the United States or Canada relate to Israel, and then the Jewish relationship, Jewish diaspora relationship with Israel, and then we bring it really micro. Where is Israel in your center and in your work? Right. So that's what we concentrate on. And we also, at the end of that period, people work on projects for their communities. We'll talk about in a minute. And then this is sort of it's woven through, and we try to do it in a sort of subtle way. But the whole idea thread in the program is, what is community? We all work in a place where we walk in the door that has the word community in the title. What does that really mean? What is a community? When does a community thrive? What's my community vis-a-vis Israel? We know that that's become complicated in the last year. But we try to look at it from the positive end, which is, how can Israel engagement enrich my community? How does it enrich me? And how does it enrich? And then this is the last part, which is cohort 1 just finished. Implementation, building, sharing, and implementing projects. So the official program runs from January to December of a year. If you're in cohort 3, we're doing that in 2025. And then in 2026, for those first 6 months, you're working on a project to implement in your community, right? So I'm going to let the fellows talk a little bit more about that as well. And just this is our first cohort. There they are. You can smile at your friends, Becky and Allison. Here's lovely cohort 2, Ellen. I'm not going to leave you guys out. This is in Israel. A lot of food, regardless of what continent we're on. There's always a lot of food. Sometimes we make the food. And I'm going to stop the share so that people have an opportunity to hear more and to get questions answered, clarified, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that was really brief. I really want the chance for the fellows to say a word, and really for you guys to have a chance to ask any questions that you have. So why don't we, does somebody have a burning question? Maybe we'll do that first. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. See what happens when I'm 5 minutes late? It totally throws me. What I didn't describe was sort of what happens in that January to December. January through December, we have an educational program where monthly we meet for webinars. There's often a presenter who is working on a topic that people know in advance. There's reading to do in advance, or video to. Can everybody mute? Somebody's in a noisy JCC, which is, where we all work. And And then we try to leave some time for discussion after, whether it's Q&A with the presenter or in small groups. So that happens on a monthly basis. We generally take a break and do a couple of optional things in the summer. Summer is rough because we have camp directors and we have, family vacations, makes it kind of difficult. And we have 3 in-person gatherings. So the first one is in March, right? We come for 3 days. You finally meet the people you've been seeing on screen, and we have an educational program and, the social part of it. We go in May to Israel for a 9-day trip, and then we meet again in the fall. So cohort 1 met in October. In fact, we met on October 11th, which was not easy, but I think very important for them to all be together, as they told us, as they all shared. And this year, cohort 2 is meeting for their final gathering in November, within the context of the Z3 conference, if people have heard of that, which happens out in Palo Alto at the JCC in Palo Alto, which we can talk more about. Okay, so that's a pretty important part that I forgot. And the topics are, it's history, it's arts, it's culture, it's Israeli film. It's for cohort 2, we added 2 sessions. They did 2 additional hours to that monthly schedule, because every single person in the period of doing their interview said, I'm here because I don't know I don't understand. I need to know more about the conflict and how it arose and where people sit on these things. I know what I don't know. So we actually did almost a mini course. We did the mini course before our March session. So they were really dedicated and squeezed it all in. I'm trying to answer questions, sort of a community. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's it. I'll get to the questions in the chat if we don't get them answered, Melissa, don't worry. That's it. Again, I hope you fellows tell them I'm not like a scatterbrained crazy person. Forgetting half the things I wanted to talk about. One thing that I think is really important and that we try to make a priority is a diversity in the cohort. That there are people from every department, different ages, different personal backgrounds. That's what makes our cohort so powerful. And the criteria right now, we expanded this year. Originally, the 10-year period was 3 to 5 years, because the Hoffers really were looking to cultivate people really new. We've expanded this year from 2 to 8 because there are just too many great people out there. And I always wound up making an exception because there was somebody we couldn't turn away. I know there have been questions even from some folks on the call. I'm above, I'm below, I can only make exceptions or talk about exceptions when I see the whole pool. We have a review committee, we have an acceptance advisory committee, and then we see who have we got, and then we can talk about, okay, what might be appropriate here. We do really want representation from across departments and personal backgrounds. I'm going to stop talking because I'm not doing so great today. And I'm going to ask actually each of the fellows to maybe make a general comment about what the experience has been like for you. If you want to emphasize one aspect of what I laid out very briefly, that would be great. And then we'll open up for questions. So I don't know, Allison, you want to start us off?
Sure. So I was in cohort 1, proud alumna. This experience was, if not, I'm going to say it was the best of my professional career. It really was a life-changing experience. We happened to go, as Andy mentioned, before October 7th. So it really put everything into context that we're seeing now. And as Andy mentioned, some people were Israel newbies. I was in that group. So I didn't really have a personal connection to Israel before we started this first cohort. And now I feel extremely connected to Israel. I understand what's happening. I have found a love for the culture and the food and all the great stuff that Israel brings to this world. And it's been just a wonderful experience all the way through. Even now that we're sort of officially done, our cohort keeps meeting informally on Zoom, and we're hoping to get together again at some point in person. It's just been a wonderful, wonderful experience, and the educational level is off the charts. I know Andy's a little out of sorts today, but she is amazing, and she puts together like the best, most really great speakers, Just a fantastic educational program that gives you the full story of much more than what you see on the news every night. It really gives you the history and the background. And, we wrestled with tough topics, but it was really important to learn about it.
Great, thank you. Becky, you want to take it?
Sure. Hi, I'm Becky. I am from the Bridgewater JCC. I am the assistant camp director. I was also in cohort 1, and I would say that it wasn't my first time in Israel, although I had only been to Israel once before, very quickly, about less than a year beforehand. But for me, what I found to be amazing is what I would have taken away from a trip to Israel or learning about Israel in general on my own, and what you take away when you have a group of such diverse people. There were things I would have never thought to look at or think about or question or anything like that, that with everyone together as a group, it just, your mind was open so much more in so many ways that it was just so much more impactful as you went through each step of everything. Andy's amazing, so you won't go wrong there. She is truly amazing, and I would agree that our cohort, it's wonderful to have. While we still do meet sometimes, we have a group chat that is constantly being used. It's wonderful to have people all over from all different JCCs to ask questions about, to just pop ideas off of, even though we're not even in the same departments. So it's been great.
Thanks, Becky. So Ellen started the program, applied for the program in the midst of everything. It was the same basic timeline where the deadline was, we opened after Labor Day, the deadline was November 8th. And then we had this cohort of folks who said, I'm still in. I want to be part of this. So Ellen, maybe you can share a little bit about, what motivated you and what you're finding, and you're in it still. You're in the thick of it.
Yeah, so I'd agree with Allison. This has been really the most impactful professional development program that I've done in my career, and the educational component and also the travel components have been both extremely meaningful and profound in many ways. And so I'd really just encourage you all to apply and participate if you're invited to. But I think it goes without saying that the most impactful part of being there is being there, right? Not reading articles or hearing from experts, which is interesting, but actually being on the ground there in Israel is a different feel and a different understanding that I, didn't appreciate, I think, before I went. I have been at the JCC and Federation for about 7 years. I'm not Jewish, and I'd never been to Israel before the trip. And so I was among many of our group, the first timers going. And, we visited in this context of a post-October 7th world where hostages were still being held and there was active fighting, still is, going on. And so, it was even kind of day to day, is the trip happening? Do we feel comfortable going, checking in with our families? And I think we had a committed group that said, we're going to go, right? I feel comfortable. I trust the group that we're going with, and I know that they're going to create an experience that is meaningful. And so, one of the things I think most of us took away from this trip is this juxtaposition of joy and sadness that's woven through everyone's lives right now. People are kind of living in both of these worlds constantly because they know people who are involved in the fighting or who have been killed. And also life goes on, right? They have birthdays and anniversaries and weddings. And so it's in the midst of all of this heaviness, but there is also happiness and joy. And I think we experienced that most poignantly when we went to the hotel on Shabbat. We had been there. It was one of the first places we went when we first arrived, and got a history lesson, right? Of when it was built, when it was partially destroyed, and what's left. And then we went back on Friday evening, and after going to Mount Herzl and seeing these, graves that have been freshly dug, right? Soldiers that had perished in the last week. And yet everyone was joyful and celebratory and welcoming this respite, right? One chance to just take a breath. And so I think it's being there in that moment and really experiencing that made me understand just who Israelis are and what the culture is.
Beautiful. Thanks, all three of you. I told you, it's the best job I ever had. It's so rewarding and incredible. And it's kind of a self-selecting group, so the people that wind up in the final cohort and many of the people who apply, sadly, we can't always take everyone, tend to be a particular kind of person. And so we've, enjoyed being together and traveling together and learning together, and really enhances the people really enhance the experience. So I wanna answer your question, Melissa, and then we'll open it up. So the first session in person in 2025 will be in March. And I can't give you the location until we sign the contract, but it will likely be in the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area. You probably will fly into Newark or maybe Philadelphia. Some people drove into. That's what we're looking at, and we know that sooner or later. All the information.
Andy,
Yes.
do you have the dates for that?
I do. All the dates. Clear your.
Well, I'm asking if am I going to be here or am I going to be away?
Yeah, I checked the JCCA calendar as much as I could, and I think you're going to be around. It's
fantastic.
March 17th to 20th. But if you go to the pages in the JCC Resource Center that have the application, there's a timetable. All the dates are listed. And when you apply, you should make sure that you're available for all those dates, because we have not had an issue with attendance. People, when they're in, they're in. But if you're going to not be able to be at something or be at a chunk of something where we're in person, this isn't the year. Maybe wait another year. Listen, things happen, emergencies happen. But we're talking about if you have a wedding, you have a graduation, you can't get to Israel on the day that we're going. You don't, because everything is built to build each experience on the next. Yeah, clearly not enough caffeine today. Each experience builds on the former experiences. So you don't, you want to make sure that you're getting the total range. Okay, so let's open it up for your questions, and then we can really, and don't be afraid, like if you're concerned about security, safety, whatever it may be. Yes, Riva.
Hi. So
Hi.
I am in the bucket of people who has experience with Israel. I have family there. I traveled there many times and lived there for a short time. But I'm curious if the alumni of the program can share just examples of the programs that were created back in their JCCs, because for me, I'm most interested in I'm newly in my role. Though I did grow up with JCCs my whole life, but I'm most curious about how I can really translate the Israel experience back to my JCC, and just thinking about just how we think about Jewishness and we talk about Jewishness. I'm on the marketing team, so talking about things and language is really where I spend all my time. So I'm wondering what those programs look like.
Allison, you want to take that one? Some people are still finishing theirs. There are people who their deadline for their reports is not till the end of the month. And there are some people who asked to go into the fall, or, I'm pretty easy professor. So I'm a little bit flexible on it. So, but Allison completed hers beautifully. So why don't you tell us?
Yeah, so I did, for Yom HaAtzmaut, I did an Israeli food festival, and we paired it with a concert from an Israeli rapper who's from the Gaza envelope region. And it was really just like a great night of, people came and ate and then enjoyed some music. So it brought a different, flair to our usual, we have cultural arts performances, but we don't usually pair them with specifically Israeli food. And we tried to show the diversity of the food of Israel and bring in the cultural piece through that. But from a marketing perspective, I would say that this fellowship really gave me some of the tools to talk more about Israel, and, things that maybe I didn't know before. I don't know what your experience is, because obviously you have more of a connection to Israel than I did when I started, but it was extremely helpful from a marketing perspective and communications, because I could use terminology I had never heard of before, you know, pulling images from my trip. I've used images from my trip in marketing pieces. So it's been incredibly helpful from the marketing standpoint as well.
Just a couple of other examples. We had a person in cohort 1 who's an artist, and that's what he does at his JCC. And he did a project where he did an art auction. He got local artists to contribute art, and they're sending the funding over to the hostage families forum. And in his classes, he had people design T-shirts, each got the name of a hostage. And we're going way back. He did his very early on. And in fact, one of them was freed, and we're going to be giving that hostage the T-shirt from the Florida JCC, which is rather overwhelming. Another person, they can be small and big. Another person did a film festival. It was a smaller thing. She had, I think, a series of 3 films. And she had talkbacks with the director or somebody in the film that she had on screen, direct from Israel. Beautiful program. And then, of course, what's the goal here? So that when something not great happened in Tel Aviv a few weeks ago, and people were walking in her office to find out, how are those people? They now have a relationship with people in Tel Aviv that they didn't have. Cohort 1 always heard me talk about moving the dial, move the arrow, what did I used to say? Who knows? Help me. Just move the dial. However, if you have this much of Israel, so this much is a lot more. If you're from a JCC that does a lot of Israel education, then maybe you have the resources to do a little bit more. If you have a shaliach, an Israeli emissary, so maybe you have another set of hands and a brain to help you. If you have been, whatever it is, just move the dial on Israel engagement. Now, we know that after October 7th, just about everybody up their game when it came to that, which is a poor choice of words, but everybody became much more engaged. And I'm not sure that's the case now still. We know that there's all kinds of issues out in certain communities, and that becomes a real challenge. Allison had it even in Staten Island, which is, in the New York area. Real challenges trying to do something about Israel. So every project is tailored to your community. Another person, Indianapolis, did a festival of Israel for a week. It started in her day camp director, and then it expanded to the whole JCC. Not Jewish, 90% non-Jewish membership. And based on the pictures and on her report, it looks like it was a big hit. So you will do something that works for your JCC. It's not a one fits all. So you can go talk to Riva, right? And find out she's still working on hers. And I see a Savannah t-shirt, so you can go talk to our friend Jackie. I see that the fellows are spreading the word. I'm very happy to see that. Okay, other questions? Questions about the trip, questions about decisions, how we make them. I'll ask a question. Why do people find themselves on this call? What sort of drew people to even inquire or think about the program? That's instructive to me. Go ahead, Melissa.
Sure. So in our JCC, we're really struggling, and we're starting a task force about the place of Israel in our JCC. We live in a community where there are at least 5 organizations working with Israel in various capacities. And what is the JCC's lane? And what should we be doing for our Jewish members and our non-Jewish members? And how can we serve the community in a way that is unique and true to the JCC values and vision?
Oh, that's really, first of all, that's great that your JCC is doing it, because everybody's sort of reflecting, I think, right now. And that's a dilemma sometimes, where does a JCC fit? And, are we stepping on each other's toes? That's great. That's a great motivation. Yeah. Yeah, sure. This is Joy.
Hi.
Hi.
As a cultural arts director, I've been in this role for 5 years, and I got to know our new shaliach before COVID hit, and we'd started some fun programs together, but back then it was all of the elections. There was so much going on, election after election. And we started a really, I think, great program, virtual program together, a monthly Israel update. And it really was a treasured virtual program for our community. And through helping facilitate this program for Itai, I got to learn a lot about Israel. It was amazing educational experience and community building with other people in our community that love Israel and are connected in so many different kinds of ways. And so much has happened since then. We've continued the program. Now we're doing it still virtually, but a new Shalia, who's wonderful, but came, a month and a half before October 7th. And so a different world experience for her. And now we're doing a program, Voices from Within Israel, and bringing somebody in from Israel every month to talk to this community. Also fascinating, and really treasured by our community. So I do other Israel programming, but I've never been.
Oh,
And my two of my cohorts in my work were part of this cohort last year, and they said, "Joy, you have to go." And so
Jill and Maya.
Jill and Maya, yes.
Ellen and I
so
say hi. Tell them Ellen and I say hi.
I will. And so I'm here.
Very nice. Okay, I have to give a big red A to all those fellows out there promoting. That's really great. That's really great. Thank you. Anybody else or any other questions? I'm gonna ask a question maybe one or more of our fellows can answer, because I'm guessing that it's out there and it feels a little, maybe uncomfortable to ask. And it was 2 different times, but security and trips to Israel I've been in the Israel education business for over 40 years. This is perhaps the most extreme situation we've been in, because we've been in an extended, combat for a long time. I mean, Israel doesn't generally, wars in Israel are very short. But I've dealt with this in many ways, and I lived in Israel for 10 years, and I took care of other people's children on a gap year program. So this is sort of part of the DNA of working in Israel. It's always an issue. Now more than ever. So maybe one or more of you wants to talk about, what it was like to be in Israel, whether it was last year or this current year. The safety factor, did you have hesitations? Did your family members have hesitation? Ellen told us a little bit about that, but maybe a little bit more nuts and bolts about how it really felt there. Because we can't run away from the fact that there are issues. There are always issues, and now we have more issues. And we don't run away from them, and we also try to give as balanced as an approach as we can within reason, in terms of where we visit and who we meet. So maybe people could address some of those issues, having experienced it.
I can start, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously we went at a different time, and there was much more kind of urgent security questions. I think for me, the discussion was, it was different. So with the people that I worked with and people at the organization, a lot of people had traveled to Israel since October 7th. And so I just talked to them about what their experience was like, how they felt, and everyone really felt very safe, when they were on the ground, moving around, traveling through the country. They felt really confident that I should go and that it would be a secure environment. My family was a little bit more reticent, just because we're not Jewish, and I think they don't have as good of an education and understanding about what it is like, what the security measures that they have in Israel, at the airport, around town, those kinds of things. They can't quite picture what that looks like, and they also don't just have any kind of knowledge about how strong the security is in Israel. So I really took both of those into consideration, and I decided that I didn't want to miss out, and that I trusted the organization to make the right decision, that if it wasn't safe, that we wouldn't go. And they also made decisions each day, based on our itinerary was that something that we felt comfortable doing, and that they were willing to, cancel the trip or postpone it or change our itinerary even once we were there, to make sure that everybody was safe and secure. So I really trusted the lead of Andy and the security team and JCCA while we were there.
Thanks,
I
Ellen.
felt very comfortable the whole time.
Thanks.
I would also say, so we went, Allison and I went before October 7th, and before we left, I had absolutely zero fear or concern, and didn't feel once, not even the slightest bit, unsafe when I was there. And I recognize it's very different now than it is then. But even when we were there then, they had the same security measures in place, in the sense that every morning they would meet with the security team to discuss if it was safe to go into each of those locations and if they needed to change anything up because of that. And so that was always nice to know that even before everything going on, that was still in place. I have the opportunity to potentially be part of another program that's going in December, which Andy, I hear you might be part of. That, so this is a different time where I'm making a choice to go when it is more unsafe there, or when there's more going on, I should say. But that isn't stopping me from making that decision. That the fear of anything like that, I have, exactly like Ellen said, I have full faith in the organization and in everyone who is planning everything, that they would not ask us to come and be a part of something if it wasn't going to be safe at every aspect of, every step of the way. So.
Thanks, Becky. Yeah, Melissa.
Is there any advice for a mother of toddlers figuring out if the trip is like a good choice to be away for 9 days, especially over my son's 3rd birthday, which is personal choice, but how you navigated that with your families and having that conversation of how important this is to you?
So, I mean, my children, so we went 2 years ago. So my children were 5, 8, and 8. So they were a little bit older. So I have 3. And I mean, we were gone on Mother's Day. We were gone, it happened to be my birthday, which wasn't really that exciting. But and I recognize my children were a little older, but it's an experience and an opportunity to be part of something you're not going to get to have other times. And sure, I also am slightly different in terms of parenting than I think a lot of people. And my coworker is sitting right there and said, but yes, will you miss the actual day of their birthday? Maybe. But can you plan an amazing birthday party right before you leave or for right when you come back, and they won't know the difference and they won't remember that it's not on their birthday? Yes, you can. You can have the most amazing time right before you leave and have this most amazing birthday. And a 3-year-old's not going to look back and be like, oh my God, she did it on May 10th and not on May 14th. And, it's not going to be the opportunity that you have and the things that you will then get to share with your family afterward well outweigh missing the actual day of their birth for their 3rd birthday. So that's my personal opinion. But I tend to be a little bit more loose as a parent in terms of things.
Ellen, you have anything to add?
I'll just add, my kids are a little bit older than that too, but there were a lot of moms on our trip, and some who had very young kids, actually 2 who were pregnant on the trip actually to Israel. And so you can imagine their kids are pretty young, right? And all of us would say, you should go. You can, I agree with the birthday. And I think the biggest challenge is actually just the logistics in getting grandparents to help and what are they going to eat and how are they going to get to ballet lessons and soccer practice and all of that is the planning is much more difficult than the actual being away, but the experience was well worth it.
I can remember on the bus more with one than two, that based on the time difference, if we had a ride, well, Houston was checking in with her kids, and then New York was checking in with her kids, and people were getting did you get out of bed? Did you pack your lunch? They were having those dialogues on the bus in a way that allowed them to sort of be with the family, but also they were 100% with the experience. Then they turned it off and they were with us. So, our moms here can give you, I think gave you some pretty good guidance. Anything else we can tell you? It's really fun to hear from our three fellows. It's really great. What else can I tell you? If there's people who have had somebody, Riva, you've had more experience with Israel, I think you can go right to Rena, who can tell you. I learned later that Rena was doing simultaneous translation to the group when we were speaking in Hebrew, which was not that we were trying to hide anything. We would just would speak in Hebrew because we're in Israel and we're trying to decide where to have lunch, So somebody with a little bit, we had somebody in group one who actually had lived in Israel for a number of years, and she got as much out of it as anybody else. In group two, we had, somebody who had spent a year abroad and Israeli in-laws, and, and then there are the people who had never been. Somehow it, again, because of the nature of the people who wind up in this program, and these people also can tell you that we had a call a few weeks ago of the first two cohorts, and I was a blubbering mess, because it was so overwhelming to me to see all those people on the screen and see what fabulous people had been attracted to this program. I was so proud for the Hoffer family, and in the legacy of Martin Pear, that these are the kind of people that are attracted to this, that want to learn, that want to develop themselves professionally, and that want to really build that relationship. What else? Any other questions popping up? I think we have Tampa. Eliana, where are you located?
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati. I wonder who mentioned the program to you. Oh, good job, Ellen. Okay, very nice. Very nice.
I run our youth theater program, so and I've been to Israel a few times, but I sort of feel like this lens and then being able to kind of bring the things that you guys were discussing sort of